The thrilling Four Nations tournament is over, and now it's time to return to NHL hockey. Can the New York Islanders make a big playoff push toward the end of the season? We're going to talk about that, preview Sunday's game, and the latest transactions, all on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. I'm Gil Martin. I have been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers. Great to have you with us to talk a little Islanders hockey today. And boy, how fitting was it that the Four Nations tournament went into overtime? We're going to talk about that, the latest Islanders transactions, and we will be previewing Sunday's return to action for the Islanders against the Dallas Stars. So all that and more coming up on today's show. I'll tell you, this tournament, the Four Nations, and yes, there was only one New York Islanders player in the tournament, and that was Brock Nelson for Team USA. But I'll tell you, this whole thing that started out as something that nobody was sure what to expect turned into an absolute classic tournament. And how involved did it get? I mean, if I would have told you before the Four Nations tournament started that Canadian fans would boo the American national anthem, that there would be 3 fights in the first 9 seconds of the Team USA, Team Canada regular round robin competition game. If I would have told you that the President of the United States would call Team USA before the final to wish them luck and get involved in things that way, and that the championship game between Team USA and Team Canada would go to sudden death overtime, I don't know how many people had that on their bingo card when things started. We did not know whether this would be a kind of the intensity of an all-star game, which is to say almost no intensity at all, a regular season NHL game, a playoff game. We really got kind of an Olympic style, playoff style tournament here. And I'll tell you, there was hitting, there were injuries, unfortunately, and this series just was so intense. And unfortunately, here's the thing. Next year, we go back to the All-Star game. And it's at UBS Arena. The Islanders are hosting that game. And it is probably going to be such a letdown compared to what we just saw and compared to the Olympics and everything else. It's just, I think this tournament has proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that the All-Star game format has outlived its usefulness. That going forward, and maybe the game at the UBS Arena next year is historic because it will be the last game played in the All-Star game format. But it really has outlived its usefulness. The attraction of the All-Star game used to be that you would get to see all the players, the best players in the league, go head to head, and there was something on the line. And, how rare was it back in the day to get to see guys who, if you were an Islander fan, how often did you get to see Marcel Dion of the Kings or Wayne Gretzky of the Oilers? I mean, depending on the year, I can go through all the different star players, but and then to see guys like, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin go head to head or be teammates or whatever the format was, it was special to be able to have all that talent going all out all in one game. But then it wasn't Wales versus Campbell or East versus West. The intensity of it just got away from everybody. And here's the other thing. It just, the idea or the importance of getting to see all these players on the ice. Nowadays, you get NHL Center Ice or ESPN Plus or whatever the case may be, you could watch every game. So the intensity, the players are so much better paid now. The intensity of an all-star game is just kind of gone, and the format needed to change. And as much as I am usually critical of Gary Bettman and some of the decisions he makes regarding the way the NHL was run, this tournament exceeded everybody's expectations and gave us some really great hockey, skill, speed, physicality, great goaltending. Gotta say that in the championship game, Jacob Slavin, wow, proved his worth. Brock Nelson of the Islanders, little disappointing. I think the guy who scored the second goal for Canada, the tying goal that ended up sending the game into overtime, Brock was the guy who needed to be back on that play, and he wasn't. So, that ended up kind of costing Team USA, and that's unfortunate, obviously. It's just, Sam Bennett got the goal, but I think Brock was kind of responsible, largely speaking, on that play. And look, Nelson is getting his minutes, but not, again, it's a bottom six kind of a role. And, great to have an Islander representing in this tournament. But I guess the fact that, it's not a major role for Brock Nelson as far as ice time goes, but, he wore the A. He certainly did accomplish some things, and it was good that the Islanders had some representation. But again, the fact that the Islanders only had one player, and I think even if everyone was healthy, it still would have been one player, had Russia actually been able to ice a team. I think obviously Ilya Sorokin would have been one of the goalies for Team Russia, but at the end of the day, one Islander, and yet it was still exciting, great hockey. And, you think about the Olympics, you think about the world, the Canada Cup matchups, USA versus USSR back in the 70s, and the Challenge Cup in 1979. So many exciting international moments, and this one lived up to the hype and, exceeded expectations in a huge, huge way. So thank you to Team USA and to Team Canada for showing us, reminding us really how exciting hockey can be when it's played with intensity and at a high level of skill and speed. And, it makes you fall in love with hockey again, and that was a great thing. So the game, as I record this, is in overtime, and we'll see how it all plays out. But again, it has really exceeded expectations. All right. We've got a lot more to get to. We have our latest injury and transaction updates as the Islanders made a move on Thursday. We'll preview the game Sunday against Dallas. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a Hall of Famer who played for the U.S. Olympic team in 1984, but the Islanders had to let go. We'll see about if you can guess who that is. It's a pretty easy one, but we've got all that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you could place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So we mentioned, everydayers will remember, we mentioned on yesterday's show that, the Islanders were getting some players back in practice. And we also knew that if they were going to bring back guys like Scott Mayfield and Ryan Pollock, that they had to make a move, that they could not bring them all back without making some kind of transaction. And on Thursday, the Islanders placed defenseman Dennis Cholowski on waivers. Now, 24 hours, we'll see if another team claims him. I would not be surprised if he clears waivers, but can't activate Pollock without sending Cholowski down, or if he does get claimed, then, we move on. And it's not a surprise in the sense that the last game before the break, it's clear that Patrick Waugh did not have confidence in Dennis Cholowski. The Islanders were on a back-to-back, and he still played less than 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 52 seconds, only 4 shifts against the Minnesota Wild. So the writing was really on the wall. And Cholowski really kind of dipped down in the depth chart. You had Anthony DeAngelo, Scott Perunovich, Adam Boqvist, all ahead of him on the depth chart. So this move makes sense. And at practice on Thursday, Pollock practiced without the non-contact jersey. So he was in on every drill, and at some point before Sunday, and it'll have to be after, Friday, after Cholowski either gets claimed or clears waivers and gets sent down to Bridgeport, they will activate Pollock off IR, and we will essentially have Scott Mayfield and Ryan Pollock ready to go for Sunday's game. And yeah, it's important. It is. The Islanders right now are looking to find a way to make that playoff run, and getting some of these players back healthy is one way to do it. Congratulations, by the way, to Team Canada. Connor McDavid gets the overtime game winner, 8 minutes and 18 seconds into overtime. So Canada ends up taking the Four Nations tournament. Team USA, the runner-up. And congratulations to Team Canada for that. But, the Islanders will have some decisions to make now that you have players starting to get healthy again. And now Cholowski is the first domino to fall. Who would be the next one? I get the feeling it would probably be Boqvist. Don't know for sure, but I think Adam Boqvist is probably next. I don't think they would necessarily try to waive him. They might, make him a black ace, but we'll see. It's all one step at a time, and each time a guy comes back, you have to take somebody out of the lineup. And whether they have to be sent to Bridgeport or waived or traded, so many things. But here we are, finally returning from the Four Nations tournament. And the Islanders right now have 6 games between the return to action and the start of the playoffs, and the NHL trade deadline, excuse me. And these are not easy games. I think out of all the games between now and the trade deadline, most of them are against teams that are going to make the playoffs if the season ended now. You have Sunday against Dallas, Tuesday against the Rangers. That's always, you could throw out the records. That's always an intense game. You go to Boston. The only game against a team that's kind of struggling is a home game against Nashville on March 1st. You go to Madison Square Garden on March 3rd and then host Winnipeg on March 4th. And then the trade deadline is on the 7th. And oh, by the way, on the 8th, you start that West Coast road trip at San Jose, at Anaheim, at LA. But these next 3-4 games are going to determine what Lou Lamoriello decides to do at the trade deadline. And we all know Lou. And we all know Lou wants to be a buyer. He probably wants to re-sign Brock Nelson. He probably would even want to re-sign Kyle Palmieri, although I don't think either one of those moves is in the best long-term interests of the team. And I think he will look to add a goal scorer if he can at the trade deadline. But again, and everydayers, you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. This team needs to get younger, faster, and more skilled. And re-signing players in their early to mid-30s to multi-year contract extensions or new contracts doesn't help in that respect. And as much as I really love everything Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri have done for the New York Islanders over the years, even a 3-year deal with either one of those players probably means diminishing returns. And if you can trade them for picks, prospects, or even for players who are currently on another team's NHL roster, that is better for the long-term health of this franchise. The Islanders remain stuck in the muddy middle with an aging roster, and they haven't won a playoff series in 3 years. This year, it's looking like a 4th year is likely, that they have about a 26% chance, according to the Athletics computer model, of even making the playoffs. And then if they make it, they're going to face Florida or Toronto or Washington or Carolina, and they'd be an underdog against any one of those 4 teams. And if they somehow pull off an upset in round 1, the next best remaining team will be their opponent in the next round, and so on. So you got to get out of the muddy middle. And the way these contracts are expiring and the way things are set up, this is Lou Lamoriello's best opportunity to do that. Whether he'll be able to do it, well, that's another question. And whether he's willing to do it, that's another question also. If the Islanders go 0-3 in their next 3 games, let's say, Or, again, we mentioned there are 6 games between now and the trade deadline. If the Islanders go below 500, then even Lou Lamoriello probably should admit it's time to sell. Will he? Hey, that's the $1 million question. But this team, even if they decide they still want to go for it, trading away guys who are getting older and are not going to bring back as good a return and could bring you younger assets and future assets that this team desperately needs in a trade, you could always re-sign Brock Nelson or Kyle Palmieri this offseason, and you could trade them away and get assets for them and then sign them back. I'm not even advocating for that, but it's better than just letting them walk away for nothing or signing them to a long-term deal and clogging up more cap space and watching them play years 2, 3, 4 on an extension with diminishing returns. We'll see what Lou does. Never a dull moment, but it's going to be interesting. The next couple of weeks, critical to the future of this franchise. We have got more to get to on today's show. We will preview Sunday's first game back after the Four Nations tournament. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by SelectQuote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Stanley Cup. Same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million with no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from our hosts, Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am happy to say that Sunday, Islanders hockey is back. The Islanders will host the Dallas Stars. And look, Dallas is not an easy opponent. They are in second place right now in the Central Division. They are 17 games over NHL 500. Top 10 in goals scored. They're 9th in the league. Top 5 in goals against. They're 4th. Their penalty kill is the best in the league, killing off 85% of opposing teams' power plays. But their power play is only 22nd, so they're kind of below average there, 19.6%. The Islanders will have an advantage, perhaps. The Stars play the Devils Saturday at 6 p.m. So the Islanders don't play till 7:30 p.m. against the Stars. Dallas is on a back-to-back. The Islanders will be very rested. Now, that may not be as big an advantage as it is normally when the Islanders have not played a game, with the exception of Brock Nelson, in 2 weeks. So we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, Jake Ottinger, a great goalie. Assuming he plays against the Devils, then it'll probably be Casey DeSmith in goal on Sunday. If DeSmith goes against the Devils, Ottinger will be the goalie against the Islanders. I expect the Islanders will get a break and see DeSmith, or do they let Ottinger play both games? That's an interesting decision that this coaching staff in Dallas has to make. Looking at the line combinations for the Stars, Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson, and Wyatt Johnston are the top line. Matt Duchene, Mason Marchman, and Mikhail Granlund are the second trio. Maverick Bourque centers Jamie Benn and Evgeny Dodonov on the third line. And from left to right on the fourth line, it's Oscar Back, Colin Blackwell, and Logan Stankoven. On defense, Asa Lindell and Thomas Harley are the top pair. Leon Bichelle and Matt Dumba are the middle pair. And then Brandon Smith and Cody Ceci are the third pairing. The goalies, as I mentioned, Ottinger and DeSmith, Taylor Sagan, Miro Heiskanen, Niels Lundqvist, they're on IR. Ilya Lyubushkin is day-to-day. Whether he'll be back or not now that the break is over, that remains to be seen. Again, these games are critical for the New York Islanders, and they will need to play their best hockey as they come back if they want to have any chance of advancing to the playoffs this year. It's not easy. Dallas is a tough opponent, and we'll see how that back-to-back affects them. And if we see Ottinger versus Sorokin, by the way, that is two of the better goalies in the league, and that'll be a fun matchup to watch. We'll see how it all plays out, but just great to have Islanders hockey back. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and Saturday will be the 60th birthday of former Islanders center Pat LaFontaine, the St. Louis native, first-round pick of the Islanders, third pick overall in the draft back in 1983, joined the Islanders after the 1984 Olympics, where he represented the United States, and boy, did he get off to a great start. In 15 games with the Islanders that year, 13 goals, 19 points. He certainly had an immediate impact, had 47 goals, 45 goals, and 54 goals in 3 straight seasons for the Islanders, then tailed off, and I'll put that in air quotes, to 41 goals in his final season with the Islanders in 1990-91. Ownership didn't want to pay LaFontaine. He ends up being traded to Buffalo, where he enjoyed a career year in 1992-93, 53 goals and 95 assists for 148 points in 84 games. Unfortunately, concussions shortened his career. He had to retire early after the 97-98 season, where he played for the Rangers. 865 career NHL games, 468 goals, 1,013 points, 552 penalty minutes. He is a deserving member of the Hockey Hall of Fame. Played in 69 playoff games, 26 goals, 62 points in those. We go back to a very special memory for Pat LaFontaine. March 3rd, 1984, Islanders, Maple Leafs at the Maple Leaf Gardens. The goalies in this game, Billy Smith for the Islanders, Alan Bester got the start for Toronto. And after Terry Martin gave Toronto a 1-0 lead with a shorthanded goal in the first period, Pat LaFontaine comes on and scores his first career NHL goal. Bob Bourne and Dennis Potvin with the assist that ties the game at 1. The Islanders had a 3-1 lead when LaFontaine set up John Tonelli, Bob Nystrom with the other assist. That made it 4-1 Islanders. Then, in the third period, Pat LaFontaine, 4 minutes, 5 seconds in, scores his second goal of the game. John Tonelli, the assist. Midway through the third, LaFontaine returns the favor, sets up Tonelli. That's Tonelli's 24th. And then, less than a minute after that, Bob Nystrom sets up Pat LaFontaine again. He gets his first career hat trick, and in the same game, he gets his first career NHL goal. The Islanders crush the Maple Leafs 11-6, 34 saves for Billy Smith, but for Pat LaFontaine, the first big, magical game of a Hall of Fame career. He has 3 goals, 2 assists. He's a +3. He scored the 3 goals on 4 shots. And yes, he even spent 2 minutes in the sin bin. Pat LaFontaine, Hall of Famer, and a guy who should be in the Islanders Hall of Fame. That's long overdue. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we will be back Monday. We'll have our key takeaways from Sunday's game and a whole lot more. So make sure you join us for that. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.